Hey guys, tonight we are traveling to a small, God-fearing town on the edge of a dark forest. A town in the heart of 17th century Germany. A place of simmering anxieties, where the fear of damnation is as real as the threat of starvation. We are going to witness the anatomy of a witch hunt, to see how a community can turn on itself, and how the ordinary, everyday resentments of neighbors can curdle into a paranoid, deadly fury. You are about to become an official, unwilling chronicler of a town's descent into madness, a journey into the brutal history of witchcraft trials. Now for our little reality check. We tend to think of witch hunts as a product of medieval ignorance. But the great European witch craze actually peaked in the early modern period, the age of Shakespeare and the scientific revolution, and it wasn't always a case of a hysterical mob. Often, it was a cold, procedural, and legal process in the 17th century. If your cow's milk suddenly went sour, you didn't just check the feed. You might very well file a formal legal accusation against the elderly woman next door who had given you a funny look the day before. It was a less scientific, but far more dramatic approach to dairy farming. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is the only charm that protects this channel from the curses of the algorithm. And of course, I love to know where you are joining me from. So please post your city and your local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is a small, walled town in the German countryside. A tiny island of order in a vast sea of dark. Whispering forest. The year 1698, and it is a time of quiet fears. The sky itself seems to have turned against you. For the second year in a row, the spring was too wet and the summer too short and cold. The harvest has been meager. The great tithe barn is only half full, and the coming winter promises to be a long, hungry one. You are the town clerk in a community where few can read or write. Your position is one of some importance. You are a man of education, of neat handwriting, and a knowledge of the law. You are respected, but also kept at a slight distance. Your small office, just off the main market square, is the repository of the town's official life. You record property deeds, business contracts, births, deaths, and, most frequently, the endless, petty legal squabbles between neighbors. As the town clerk, you are the official keeper of everyone's grudges. You have a written record of every petty argument over a fence post or a wandering chicken. You suspect this archive of resentment will become important later. The mood in your town is tense. The failure of the crops has put everyone on edge. But the anxiety is more than just a fear of hunger. It is a spiritual anxiety. Your town is a small bastion of the old Catholic faith, surrounded by towns and villages that have embraced the new Protestant heresies. The local priest, Father Dietrich, is a man consumed by this spiritual warfare. His Sunday sermons, delivered from the pulpit of your small stone church, are filled with fire and brimstone. He speaks of the devil being more active than ever in these fallen times, of his demonic agents seeking to infiltrate God's flock to spread chaos and despair. He has a copy of a dark, scholarly book called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, and he speaks with terrifying certainty of the reality of witchcraft as the ultimate tool of Satan. The people listen, and their own misfortunes begin to look less like bad luck and more like a deliberate, magical assault. Your life is one of order in the midst of this simmering fear. You spend your days with your ink and your parchment, your world one of contracts and official seals. You believe in the law, in procedure, in the rational order of your small society. You are a pious man, but you see the world through the lens of property disputes and civic ordinances, not through the priest's lens of demons and impending doom. You are aware, of course, of the folk beliefs that exist alongside the teachings of the church. You know that farmers hang bundles of rowan branches over their barn doors to protect their livestock. You know of the local cunning woman, an old widow named Elsa who lives on the edge of town and sells herbal remedies and charms for toothaches and sour stomachs. She is a part of the community's life, tolerated for her uses, but also viewed with a perpetual, low-level suspicion. You have had cause to record the names of both the farmer and the cunning woman in your official ledger. A farmer named Conrad. A sour, unlucky man whose fields border Elsa's small property. Brought a formal complaint against her a few months ago. He claimed her goat had strayed and eaten some of his cabbages. It was a minor, common dispute, which the town magistrate settled with a small fine. But you recorded the venom and bitterness in Conrad's face. A resentment that seemed far greater than the value of a few cabbages. As autumn deepens, the town's anxieties grow. The harvest is even worse than predicted. The first snows of winter arrive weeks early, blanketing the fields in a cold, white shroud. The price of bread in the market rises. The faces of your neighbors are pinched with hunger and a growing, unspoken fear. The priest's sermons become more intense, more focused. He speaks of the devil's minions who can spoil milk, cause livestock to sicken, and blight the crops from the field. He is not speaking in metaphors. He is providing his flock with an explanation for their suffering. He is giving their fear a name and a face. You sit in your small, cold office, the wind howling outside. The smell of the first winter fires thicken the air. You review the year's records. It is a litany of small miseries, poor yields. Property disputes. Fines for watering down beer. It is the normal, mundane record of a hard year in a small town. You have no way of knowing that you are chronicling the final days of your town's innocence. You do not know that the petty grudges and the quiet fears you have so meticulously recorded are about to become the kindling for a great and terrible fire. A fire that will be lit by a single, bitter accusation, and will not stop burning until it has consumed your entire world. The long, hungry winter has just begun. The heart of winter is a time of cold, hunger, and darkness. The meager harvest is already dwindling in the town's storerooms. The days are short, the nights long and filled with the howling of the wind that sweeps down from the forested mountains. It is a time when old fears, like bears, awaken from their slumber. The spark that ignites the town's anxiety comes not from the pulpit, but from a muddy cowshed. It begins with Conrad, the bitter farmer whose land borders that of the old widow. Else, Conrad's prized possession is his single dairy cow, a creature whose milk is vital for the survival of his young children. One morning, the cow refuses to eat by evening. It is feverish. The next day, the small amount of milk it gives is thin and bluish, and it sours almost instantly in the pail. A week later, despite the prayers of Conrad and the herbal remedies of his wife, the cow shudders, lets out a low groan, and dies. For Conrad, this is a catastrophe. It is also, in his mind, not a tragedy but an attack. In a normal year, he might have blamed a common sickness or bad fodder, but this is not a normal year. The priest's sermons have been ringing in his ears for months. Sermons about the devil's agents who can blight livestock and sour milk. And Conrad has a specific agent in mind. He remembers his dispute with old Elsa over the cabbages. He remembers the sharp, angry words she muttered at him as she left the magistrate's office. That evening, in the town's only tavern, fueled by cheap, sour wine and a burning sense of grievance, Conrad makes his accusation public. He slams his fist on the rough wooden table, his voice a roar that silences the room. "It was not a sickness," he bellows, his face a mask of rage. "It was witchcraft. She has bewitched my cow, the old woman. Else," he tells the assembled crowd of drinkers and gossips his story. He describes how the milk soured. This detail electrifies his audience. The belief in milk witchcraft is a deep and ancient one in this part of the world. The idea that a witch can magically steal the richness from a neighbor's milk or curdle it with a curse. He then tells them of Elsa's muttered words, her evil eye, her solitary life on the edge of the woods where she gathers strange herbs. He paints a picture not of a lonely old woman, but of a malevolent sorceress in league with the devil, the farmer's cow, which has been eating nothing but moldy hay for 3 months, has died. His conclusion, not malnutrition, but a satanic curse. It's a bold diagnostic leap. The reaction in the tavern is a telling one. A few men, friends of the miller or those who have had their own run-ins with Conrad's temper, look skeptical. But many more nod along, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a strange, morbid excitement. Conrad's story gives them a focal point for their own anxieties. It gives the faceless misery of the hard winter a specific, human cause. The accusation spreads through the town like a contagion itself. Suddenly, other people's minor misfortunes are re-examined in this new, sinister light. Old man Hannes remembers that his best laying hen stopped laying eggs a month ago, right after Elsa had admired it. The baker's wife recalls how a whole batch of bread failed to rise last week. On the very day Elsa walked past her shop, the whispers become a low, rumbling chorus of suspicion. Suddenly, everyone's minor inconveniences are evidence of a demonic plot. Your bread is burnt witchcraft. You stub your toe, the devil's work. Your husband is drunk again, clearly the work of a seductive succubus, and not the cheap ale at the tavern. You in your small office. Hear the rumors as they swirl through the market square. As a man of the law, your first instinct is to see the accusation for what it is, a land dispute that is curdled into a slanderous fantasy. You know Conrad to be a difficult, grasping man. You know Elsa to be a sharp-tongued but harmless old woman who has lived in the village her entire life. But you are also a man of your time. The world you inhabit is one where the devil is a real and active presence. You believe in God, in heaven, in hell. To deny the possibility of witchcraft would be, in a way, to deny the reality of the devil himself, and therefore to question the very foundations of your faith. You find yourself in a state of deep and troubled uncertainty. On Sunday, Father Dietrich takes to the pulpit. He does not name Conrad or Elsa. He does not need to. He delivers a thunderous sermon on the passage from the book of Exodus, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." He speaks of the ways the devil recruits his agents, preying upon the lonely, the bitter, the women of loose morals or weak faith. He describes how these witches, in exchange for their souls, are given the power to curdle milk, to raise storms, to cause sickness in man and beast. His sermon is not a call for caution or for proof. It is a call to arms. It is a confirmation from the highest moral authority in the village that the threat is real and that it lives among them. The priest gives a powerful sermon about how witches are everywhere, disguised as your neighbors. It's a great message for promoting community trust and harmony. The sermon galvanizes the town. The whispers turn into a confident, self-righteous roar. The doubt vanishes, replaced by a terrifying certainty. The next morning, your office door opens. It is Conrad the farmer, but he is not alone. He is flanked by 2 other grim-faced men, old man Hannes, who has now convinced himself Elsa is responsible for his barren hen, and the baker, whose wife has persuaded him of the witch's role in his failed batch of bread. They have come as a formal delegation. We have come to make a formal accusation, Conrad says, his voice thick with a sense of his own importance and righteousness. We accuse the widow Elsa of the crime of malefixium, of witchcraft. We accuse her of making a pact with the devil, of cursing our livestock and our livelihoods. We demand that she be arrested and brought to justice. You look at the 3 men standing before you. You see the greed and bitterness in Conrad's eyes. You see the simple-minded fear in the eyes of Hannes. You see the reluctant but real suspicion in the face of the baker. You look down at the clean sheet of parchment on your desk, at your pot of black ink, at the sharpened tip of your quill. You know what this means. This is no longer a tavern brawl or village gossip. This is the law, the machinery of justice. Once set in motion, is a difficult thing to stop. The words you are about to write will take a woman from her home. They will subject her to interrogation, to humiliation, and possibly to a terrible death. They will transform a petty village squabble into a formal, legal battle with the forces of darkness. You know you have no choice. It is your duty to record the accusation. You dip your quill into the ink, the panic has been ignited, and you are the one holding the match. You dip your quill in the ink pot. The scratching sound of the nib on the parchment unnaturally loud in the tense silence of your small office. You take down Conrad's formal accusation, your hand forming the neat, legalistic script automatically. You then take the testimony of his two companions, Hannes and the baker. Their story's a muddled collection of vague suspicions and half-remembered slights. Now given the terrible weight of sworn testimony, when you are finished, you have a formal legal document that accuses the widow Elsa of the capital crime of maleficium. You take the document to the town magistrate. Herr Schmidt, he is a cautious, weary man who would much rather be dealing with property disputes than with the devil. He reads your document, his face growing paler with each line. He knows what the law and the terrified populace now demand of him. With a heavy sigh, he signs and seals the warrant for Elsa's arrest and examination. You accompany the town bailiff, a grim, humorless man named Ulrich, and his two assistants to carry out the arrest. You go not as a participant, but as the official clerk, to witness and record that the proceedings are done in an orderly fashion. You walk to the edge of the town, to the small, isolated cottage where Elsa has lived alone for 30 years. Her small garden, which in the summer is a riot of herbs and flowers, is now brown and dormant under a thin layer of snow. Strange bundles of dried herbs and what look like chicken bones hang from her eaves. To a rational eye, they are the simple folk charms of a countrywoman, meant to ward off bad luck, but to the eyes of the bailiff and the fearful men with him, they are the sinister paraphernalia of a witch. Ulrich pounds on the wooden door. When Elsa opens it, she is not the cowering, evil crone of the villager's imagination. She is an old woman, her back bent from years of hard work, her face a mask of deep-set wrinkles, but her eyes are sharp, intelligent, and filled with a fierce, defiant anger. "What do you want?" she rasps, her voice like dry leaves. "Els, you are arrested under the authority of the magistrate on the charge of witchcraft." Ulrich says, holding up the warrant. The old woman looks at the parchment, then at the faces of the men. She lets out a short, harsh laugh, a sound utterly devoid of humor. "Witchcraft." She scoffs, because Conrad's scrawny cow finally died of his own stupidity. You are fools, all of you. Her defiance, her lack of fear and submission, is taken by the men as the ultimate proof of her guilt. A good God-fearing woman would weep and protest her innocence. Only a witch, secure in the protection of her dark master, would show such contempt. They seize her, her angry curses echoing in the cold air as they drag her from her home. She is taken to a small, secure room in the cellar of the town hall. It is cold, damp, and has no windows. And here, the formal examination begins. It is a grim and horrifying procedure, a search for the physical proof of her pact with Satan. The examining committee is assembled. There is the magistrate, Herr Schmidt, looking deeply uncomfortable. There is Father Dietrich, the priest, his face alight with a fervent, righteous glow. There are two sober-faced women, the wives of town councilors who are tasked with performing the physical search, and there is you, seated at a small table, your parchment ready to record the findings. Father Dietrich begins by explaining the theological necessity of the search. His words taken almost directly from his copy of the Malleus Maleficarum. When a witch, he says, his voice resonating in the cold stone room, makes her obscene pact with the devil. He claims her body as his own. He places upon her a mark, a seal of his ownership. This stigma diabolicum, the devil's mark, may look like a simple mole, or a wart, or a fleck of discoloration, but it is a spot of dead flesh, a place where the devil's claw has touched her and made her insensible to pain, a spot from which no blood will flow. We must find this mark. It is the signature on her contract with hell. He also instructs the women to search for a witch's teat, an extra or unnatural nipple that the witch supposedly uses to suckle her imp or familiar. The small demon given to her by the devil as a servant, the two women approach Elsa, who has been forced onto a small stool in the center of the room. They untie her hands. The old woman spits at them, her eyes blazing with hate. The women, their faces set and grim, strip the rough woolen dress from her, leaving her naked and shivering in the cold. Torchlit room. It is a profound and brutal act of humiliation. Then they begin to shave her with a sharp knife. They methodically shave every part of her body, her head, her arms, her legs, leaving no place for a mark to hide. Elsa endures this with a stoic, hateful silence. Her dignity the only thing she has left, when she is completely bare. The final and most terrible part of the examination begins. The town's barber surgeon, a man named Carl who normally deals in bloodletting and pulling teeth, is brought in. He is the pricker. He holds up his tool, a long, sharp bronze pin, or bodkin. His job is to methodically probe every mole, every freckle, every scar, every wart, every discolored patch of skin on Elsa's old, frail body. He is searching for the one spot that does not bleed or produce a cry of pain. You watch. Your stomach a cold. Hard knot. As the grim work proceeds, it is a slow, clinical, and soul-destroying process. Carl works his way up her legs, her torso, her arms, each time he pricks a mole or a blemish. Else flinches or cries out in pain. A tiny bead of blood wells up. The surgeon wipes the pin clean and moves to the next spot. The priest, Father Dietrich, leans in close, his eyes gleaming with excitement, watching for the telltale lack of reaction. The magistrate looks away, his face green. Future historians will debate the nature of this procedure. Was it pure fraud, performed by witch prickers with retractable needles, or was it a product of profound ignorance? A misunderstanding of the body. You watch Carl, and you see no trickery. He is a simple, ignorant man, performing a task he believes to be necessary. But you also see Elsa, the victim, who, after the 10th, the 20th, the 30th jab of the pin, seems to be entering a state of shock. Her body trembling, her cries growing weaker. Finally, Carl finds a small, brown mole on her left shoulder blade. He takes the pin and drives it in. Else does not cry out. She does not flinch. A single silent tear rolls down her cheek, but she makes no sound. There? Father Dietrich cries out, his voice a triumphant shout. Did you see no pain? Carl withdraws the pin and holds it up to the torchlight. He peers at the tip. And no blood, he declares. It is a lie. Or a mistake. You are watching closely, and you are almost certain you saw a tiny speck of red on the needle's point before you wiped it away. And did the old woman not react because the spot was insensible, or because her proud, exhausted spirit had simply retreated to a place beyond the reach of any more pain? It does not matter. The devil's mark has been found. The priest proclaims. The two women nod in fearful agreement. The magistrate, looking relieved that the ordeal is over, quickly accepts the verdict. You write it down in your neat. Clerk's hand. The words feeling like poison in your mouth. Upon examination, an insensible mark, from which no blood did flow, was discovered upon the left shoulder of the accused. The stigma diabolicum is confirmed. The irrefutable physical proof of her pact with Satan has been secured. Else, now a broken and humiliated woman, is dressed again in her rough gown and led away to be locked in a dark cell in the town's jail. There to await her formal interrogation and trial, the examiners leave the cold cellar room, breathing a collective sigh of righteous relief. They are convinced they have unmasked the evil in their midst. But you remain for a moment, staring at the empty stool, the coil of rope, the discarded pin. You have not witnessed an act of justice. You have witnessed an act of methodical, procedural, and bureaucratic terror. And you know, with a cold certainty that chills you more than the damp stone walls, that this is only the beginning. The discovery of the devil's mark on Elsa's shoulder changes everything for the villagers and the authorities. The question of her guilt is now answered. The accusation has been validated by physical, irrefutable proof. All that remains is to extract the full story of her crimes. All that remains is the confession. Else is left in the cold. Dark cellar room for 3 days. It is a deliberate strategy, a standard procedure. The isolation, the darkness, the cold, and the meager rations of stale bread and water are designed to soften her, to break her spirit, to make her more susceptible to the interrogation to come. On the 4th day, you are summoned once more to the town hall's cellar. The interrogation is about to begin. The room has been prepared. A heavy wooden table and 2 chairs have been brought in for the magistrate, Herr Schmidt, and the priest, Father Dietrich. You are given a small stool in the corner, your ink, quill, and a fresh stack of parchment before you. In the opposite corner of the room, a charcoal brazier has been lit, its red glow casting a hellish light on the stone walls. And standing beside it, his face shrouded in shadow, is a large, muscular man with heavy, scarred hands. He is the town's torturer, the questioner. He silently lays out his instruments on a small wooden table iron. Thumbscrews, ropes, and a series of iron implements whose purpose you do not want to contemplate. Else is brought in. She is weaker, her defiant anger now replaced by a sullen, simmering despair. She is seated on a low stool opposite her interrogators. Father Dietrich begins. He explains the legal and theological foundation for the proceedings. "Woman," he says, his voice cold and devoid of pity, "you have been found to bear the mark of the devil. You are accused of the crime of maleficium, which is high treason against Almighty God, the most heinous of all sins. The devil gives his servants unnatural strength to conceal their guilt. Therefore, the law allows us, even encourages us, to use certain persuasive methods to help you to a true and full confession. This is not for our sake, but for the sake of your own immortal soul. A confession is the first step toward repentance. The interrogation begins. It is a relentless, circular process." Father Dietrich asked the questions, his theology a weapon. "Did you, Else, make a pact with the devil?" "No," she spits, her voice a low growl. "Did you renounce your baptism and your Savior?" "No." "Did you attend the blasphemous Sabbath in the forest?" "I do not know what you speak of." The questions go on for hours. Else remains defiant. Her denials, however, are seen not as proof of innocence, but as proof of the devil's hold upon her will. Finally, Herr Schmidt, the magistrate, leans forward. "Else," he says, his voice weary, "you have been given the chance to confess freely. You have refused. I will now turn you over to the questioner. This is your final chance to unburden your soul." The torturer steps forward out of the shadows. He picks up a thumbscrew, its metal gleaming in the torchlight. Elsa's eyes widen with a new, primal terror. What happens next is a thing of horror that you are forced to document not by sight, but but by sound. At a nod from the magistrate. The torturer takes Elsa to a dark corner of the room, beyond your direct line of sight, but you hear everything. You hear the old woman's initial, defiant grunt. You hear the creak of the terrible instrument, and then you hear a scream. A raw, piercing shriek of pure, unendurable pain that seems to go on forever. It is followed by a broken, sobbing plea when they bring her back to the stool. She is a changed woman. The defiance is gone. Shattered. All that is left is a trembling, broken vessel of pain. "Are you ready to confess now, woman?" Father Dietrich asks. His voice calm. She nods, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Yes," she whispers. "I will confess. I will say whatever you want." And so, the confession begins. It is not her story. It is Father Dietrich's story. A narrative pulled directly from the pages of his demonological books. And she is merely forced to agree with it. "You met the devil in the forest, did you not?" he asks, his questions now leading and insistent. "Yes," she sobs. "And he appeared to you as a tall man dressed in black, with the feet of a goat." "Yes." "And you kissed his hindquarters in an act of obscene fealty." "Yes." "And he gave you a familiar, an imp in the shape of a gray cat, to help you with your magic." "Yes, a gray cat. And it was this familiar that you sent to sour Conrad's milk, and to bring the sickness upon his cow." Yes. She agrees to everything. She confesses to flying on a goat to a great Sabbath on the Brocken Mountain. Deep in the forest, she confesses to dancing with demons. She confesses to using magical powders to cause hail to fall on the fields. You write it all down, your hand moving mechanically, your soul growing colder with every word. You are creating a work of pure fiction, a fantasy of learned men, extracted through agony from the mouth of a broken old woman, when her own confession is complete. Father Dietrich moves to the final, and most crucial, part of the interrogation. "You did not dance with the devil alone, did you? Else—" he asks, his voice soft and dangerous. "There were others from our town at the Sabbath, other women who have also given their souls to the enemy. The devil's conspiracy is never a solitary one. For the good of your own soul, and for the safety of this town, you must give us their names." At this, something in Elsa seems to break completely. She begins to weep uncontrollably. "No," she pleads, "please, no." To confess her own impossible sins is one thing. To condemn others is another. The priest nods to the torturer. The man steps forward again. Else looks at him, then back at Father Dietrich. Her eyes filled with a terror that is beyond words. And she breaks. "Yes," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "There were others." "Their names." Father Dietrich insists, "We must have their names." And so, she begins to speak, and with each name that leaves her lips, you feel another nail being driven into the coffin of your town. Who does she name? She names the people she has held grudges against for years. She names the baker's wife, who once accused her of short-changing her. She names the wife of the reeve, who has always looked down on her. She names another old widow, a rival of hers in the selling of herbal remedies. And then, in a final, terrible act of spite or madness, she names a name that makes even Father Dietrich pause. She names Greta, the young, pretty, and pious wife of one of the town's wealthiest merchants. A woman known for her charity. There is no reason for it, no logic. It is a random, venomous dart, thrown by a soul in its final agony. You write down every name. Your hand feels like a block of ice. Your quill seems to be writing in blood, not ink. You are no longer recording the confession of a single, accused witch. You are writing the founding document of a full-blown witch hunt. The interrogation is finally over. You have a scroll of parchment covered in a detailed, lurid, an entirely fabricated account of a satanic conspiracy, and a list of 12 other women, 12 new names for the fire. Else, now an empty, shuddering shell, is dragged back to her cell. Father Dietrich and the magistrate, Herr Schmidt. Look at the list of names you have created. They have a look of grim, righteous satisfaction on their faces. They believe they have, through this terrible work, uncovered the full extent of the devil's plot against their town. They believe they are saving their flock. You, however, are filled with a horror so profound it leaves you speechless. You have just witnessed a woman broken by unbearable pain and the terror of her own damnation condemn her neighbors to the same fate, simply to make her own torment stop. The single bitter accusation of a foolish farmer has now, through the terrible logical machinery of the law, been allowed to metastasize. The spark has become a wildfire, and you are the one holding the map, showing exactly where it will spread next. The confession of the widow Else, extracted in the cold cellar of the town hall, is not the end of the town's troubles. It is the beginning of a contagion, a madness of neighbors. The list of 12 names you recorded on that terrible night is not filed away. It becomes a warrant. Canon Matthias is gone. His name in the context of this story is Father Dietrich. I will ensure character consistency. Father Dietrich, armed with what he considers an irrefutable confession, convinces a reluctant magistrate Schmidt that they have a holy duty to act. This is not one lone wolf, but a pack. He insists, the devil has a foothold in our town. We must root out the entire conspiracy before it consumes us all. And so, the arrests begin. You are not required to attend, but you watch from the window of your office as the town bailiff. Ulrich and his men march through the market square. Their faces are grim, their purpose terrible. They go from house to house, from shop to shop, their iron-shod boots echoing on the cobblestones. You watch as they drag the baker's wife from her home, her face a mask of disbelief and terror, her husband pleading and then shrinking back in fear. You see them arrest another old widow, a rival of Elsa's in the selling of herbs, who goes quietly, her face a mask of resigned despair. The arrests continue all day. Families are shattered. Children weep in the streets as their mothers are hauled away. The town's social fabric, already frayed by hunger and fear, is being systematically torn to shreds. The most shocking arrest is the last one. The bailiff and his men stop before the fine stone-built home of a wealthy merchant. They emerge moments later with his wife, Greta, a woman known throughout the town for her piety and her charity. Her husband, a powerful man on the town council, can do nothing but watch, his face white with a mixture of rage and helpless fear. The message is clear: no one is safe. The accusation has leaped from the margins of society into its very heart. The town descends into a state of collective paranoia. A quiet, watchful terror replaces the normal rhythms of life. Neighbors who have known each other for a lifetime now look at each other with suspicion. Every misfortune is now seen through the lens of witchcrafting. Now that witchcraft is the talk of the town, everyone is an expert detective. Your neighbor's butter churn not working. Clearly a demonic impediment. A pig gets sick. The work of a satanic coven. It's amazing how many of life's problems can be solved by blaming Gertrude from down the lane. The witch hunt becomes a powerful new currency for settling old scores. The accusation is a weapon, and people begin to wield it. A man who lost a legal dispute over a piece of land a year ago now comes to your office, his face alight with righteous certainty, to offer new evidence that his rival's wife is a witch. A woman whose daughter was passed over for marriage in favor of another now remembers seeing the chosen girl's mother performing a strange ritual by moonlight. Your office becomes the center of this grim new industry. You are the scribe of the town's madness. You listen to the flimsy, vindictive stories, and you must record them all as formal testimony, giving them the terrible weight of law. Your job used to be about recording land sales. Now you're the official secretary for a town-wide paranoid meltdown. You feel like you need a significant raise, and possibly a suit of blessed armor. The theological justifications for the expanding hunt come directly from Father Dietrich. From the pulpit. He preaches of the great conspiracy of witches, citing the Malleus Maleficarum. He explains that this is not a series of individual crimes, but an organized war waged by the devil against their town. He describes the witches' Sabbath, the blasphemous midnight gathering where his servants plot the ruin of the faithful. His sermons give the villagers a framework, a grand narrative into which they can fit their own fears and suspicions. You, in the quiet of your office, feel a growing sense of horror. You try once to speak with Magistrate Schmidt. You point out the contradictions in the testimony, the obvious personal grudges motivating many of the new accusers. The magistrate listens, his face weary. I see it too. Clerk? He admits in a low voice. But what am I to do? Father Dietrich has the people in a frenzy. If I were to dismiss these charges, they would say I am in league with the devil myself. My hands are tied, the law must run its course. And so the terrible machinery grinds on. The 12 newly arrested women are subjected to the same horrifying examinations as Elsa. Their bodies are stripped, shaved, and pricked in a search for the devil's mark. And in the atmosphere of terror and under the pressure of the procedure, a mark is always found. Then come the interrogations. The cellar of the town hall becomes a permanent chamber of horrors. The screams of the accused can sometimes be heard in the market square above, and under the agony of torture. Each of the accused confesses. They confess to everything, to flying on goats, to dancing with demons, to killing livestock with a single glance. And inevitably, they are forced to name more names. The legal process is terribly efficient. You torture person A until she names person B. Then you torture person B until she names person C. It's a self-perpetuating system for proving that everyone is a witch. The list of the accused grows. The jail overflows. The panic has become a conflagration. It has grown beyond the control of the local authorities. Father Dietrich, who ignited the flame, now seems overwhelmed by the size of the fire he has unleashed. Magistrate Schmidt is paralyzed by fear and indecision. They realize they have uncovered a conspiracy so vast that they no longer have the legal or moral authority to handle it alone. A council meeting is held. The decision is made. They need an expert. They need a man with experience in these large-scale satanic conspiracies. A man with the full authority of the church and the state behind him. They need a man whose very presence will bring a terrible final order to the chaos they have created. You are tasked with drafting the official letter. It is a plea for help, addressed to the Prince Bishop of the entire region. The letter describes the great demonic conspiracy that has infested your town and humbly requests that he send his official inquisitor, a man renowned throughout the land for his expertise in rooting out and prosecuting the crime of witchcraft. You seal the letter, your heart cold. You know what this means. The amateur horrors are over. The professional horrors are about to begin. You have just formally invited a witch hunter into your home. The letter to the Prince Bishop is sent. A desperate plea launched into the world beyond your small, tormented town. And then you wait. The interrogations are paused. The newly accused women languish in the town jail. A tense, fearful quiet settles over the village. It is the quiet of a town holding its breath, waiting for a verdict or for a savior. After 3 long weeks, a rumor flies through the streets a carriage is approaching. But it is not the magnificent carriage of the Prince Bishop. It is a simple, black, functional carriage, escorted by 2 grim-faced men-at-arms. It clatters into the market square and stops before the town hall. The villagers gather at a safe distance, their faces a mixture of terror and awe. The man who steps out of the carriage is the answer to the town's prayers, and the embodiment of its worst nightmares. He is not a high-ranking churchman in fine robes. He is a layman, a doctor of law, a man in a severe, black scholar's gown. This is Inquisitor Heinrich, the man the Prince Bishop has sent to oversee the trials. He is a professional witch hunter. He is not a wild-eyed fanatic. He is something far more terrifying. He is calm, precise, and radiates an aura of absolute, unshakable certainty. His eyes are cold, intelligent, and they seem to dissect everything they look upon. He is a man who has read all the books, who knows all the rules, and who believes with every fiber of his being that he is fighting a holy war against the forces of absolute evil. He immediately convenes a meeting with Magistrate Schmidt and Father Dietrich. You are summoned to bring your records. Inquisitor Heinrich takes your carefully written scrolls, the testimonies, the confessions, and he reads them in a swift, practiced silence when he is finished. He looks at the priest and the magistrate with an expression of profound disappointment, as if a master craftsman were inspecting the clumsy work of a child. Your piety is commendable, Father, he says to Dietrich, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. And your adherence to the law is noted, Magistrate, but your work here has been amateurish. You have caught a few minnows while the great Leviathan swims in the depths below you. He begins to lecture them. And you, his new notary. You believe you have uncovered a small coven of village witches who sour milk? You are mistaken. You have stumbled upon a single cell of a vast international conspiracy, a great army of Satan raised up to destroy Christendom. The women in your jail are not just misguided peasants. They are sworn soldiers of a diabolical enemy. He opens a heavy, leather-bound book that one of his assistants places on the table before him. You recognize the title, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. The learned doctors of the church have studied our enemy for centuries, Heinrich says, his finger tapping the page. We understand their methods. We know of the obscene pact they make, the blasphemous Sabbath they attend, the foul magics they work. You have been fighting a fire with a bucket of water. I have come to bring the full, righteous flood of the law. He then explains his own terrible, flawless logic, a closed circle of reasoning from which no accused person can escape. He explains the necessity of torture. The devil is a great lord, he says calmly, and he grants his servants many gifts. One of them is the gift of silence, the ability to endure pain without confessing. Therefore, a suspect's refusal to confess under duress is not a sign of innocence. It is, in fact, proof of the devil's aid, and therefore, proof of her guilt. A true innocent would confess to anything to make the pain stop. Only a witch has the strength to resist. The Inquisitor's logic is perfect. If the accused confesses without torture, she's a witch. If she confesses with torture, she's a witch. If she doesn't confess under torture, it's because the devil is helping her, which means she's definitely a witch. It's a very streamlined legal system with a 100% conviction rate. He takes over the entire operation immediately. He inspects the cellar room and declares it inadequate. He orders a larger, more secure, interrogation chamber to be prepared. He unpacks his own instruments from the black carriage, tools far more sophisticated and terrifying than the simple thumbscrews of the town torturer. Your role is now changed. You are no longer just a recorder of events. You are Inquisitor Heinrich's formal notary. He gives you pre-written sheets of parchment, legal forms for the interrogations. They are laid out like a questionnaire, with specific questions to be asked and spaces for the answers. Did the devil appear to you? In what form? What was his name? What promises did he make? Who else was at the Sabbath? Your job is to fill in the blanks. You are no longer a chronicler of a town's madness. You are now a cog in a machine designed to produce confessions that fit a pre-written narrative. The new regime begins the very next day. Heinrich decides to re-interrogate one of the women who had already confessed, the baker's wife. He wishes to demonstrate his method. You are in the new interrogation chamber. It is larger, and the brazier of coals glows with a more intense heat. The baker's wife. a woman who had already been broken by the town's torturer, is brought before him. Heinrich's method is a terrifying blend of calm, legalistic questioning, and sudden, calculated cruelty. He speaks to her quietly at first, asking her to repeat her confession when she hesitates or her story deviates from the accepted narrative in his book. He nods to the torturer, a scream fills the room, and then the questioning resumes. He is not just interested in her crimes. He is interested in the details of the grand conspiracy. He asks her about the recipes for flying ointments, the names of the demons she danced with, the nature of the blasphemous songs she sang. He is not just prosecuting a person. He is building a case study in demonology. Finally, he comes to the most important question. The list of names you gave to the priest. He says, "It is incomplete. A coven is not so small. The devil's army is vast. You are protecting your fellow soldiers, Ian. You must give us the other names." The woman sobs that she knows no others. Heinrich simply sighs and nods once more to the man in the corner. The process is long and horrifying, but by the end of the day, he has what he wants. The baker's wife, a completely broken human being, has confessed to everything he suggested, and she has given him 5 new names. One of them is a man, her own cousin, who she claims is a warlock. Another is the wife of the magistrate, Herr Schmidt himself. You write it all down on the formal sheets, your hand moving with a cold, detached precision that you do not recognize as your own. That evening, Inquisitor Heinrich reviews your work. He nods in satisfaction. "You see," he says, looking at the list of new names, "the conspiracy is deeper than you imagined, but we will have them all. We will cut out every root of this heresy. We will make this town clean again." You look at him, at his calm, rational, and utterly terrifying certainty. You realize that the chaotic, emotional panic that first seized your town was a childish thing. This is something far worse. This is the cold, procedural, and systematic application of a terrible, unshakable ideology. The amateur horror is over. The professional. Bureaucratic horror has just begun. Weeks of terror and whispered interrogations have passed since the arrival of Inquisitor Heinrich. The town jail is now filled to bursting with the accused, the old, the young, the poor, the prosperous, men and women. Heinrich, with his methodical and relentless questioning, has extracted a dozen more confessions, each one a tapestry of lurid, fantastic detail, and each one naming more names. The web of accusation has grown to ensnare a significant portion of your small town. Now, the time for investigation is over. The time for the public trials has begun. The main hall of the town hall has been converted into a courtroom. It is a grim and intimidating space. A high bench has been erected for the judges, the town magistrate, Herr Schmidt, who now looks like a pale, nervous puppet, 2 senior town councilors, their faces grim, and at the center, dominating the proceedings, Inquisitor Heinrich himself. You are seated at a small clerk's table just below them. Your job is to be the voice and the hand of the court. You will read the formal charges and the recorded confessions, and you will document the proceedings of the trial. The hall is packed with the townspeople, their faces a mixture of fear, morbid curiosity, and a chilling, righteous excitement. They have come to see the great conspiracy against their town laid bare. They have come to see justice done. The first to be tried is Greta, the wealthy merchant's wife. It is a calculated choice by Heinrich, by trying a prominent, respected woman first. He is sending a powerful message: no one, no matter their status, is above suspicion. No one is safe from the devil's reach or from his own. Greta is brought in. She is almost unrecognizable. The proud, pious woman you knew is gone, replaced by a thin, broken creature with haunted eyes and the vacant stare of one who has endured unimaginable torment. She shuffles to a small stool in the center of the room, her gaze fixed on the floor. The trial begins. "Let the charges be read," Heinrich commands. his voice filling the silent hall. You stand, your hands trembling slightly as you unroll the parchment. You begin to read in a clear, formal voice, though the words feel like poison on your tongue. The accused, Greta, wife of Wilhelm, is charged with the crime of maleficium and heresy. That she did. On the night of the full moon, renounce her holy baptism and make a pact with the demon Satan. That she did attend the blasphemous witch's Sabbath in the forest, where she danced with demons and performed obscene rites. That she did, through the use of a magical powder, cause the sickness of the child of her neighbor. Hannah, the litany of impossible crimes goes on and on. When you are finished, Heinrich turns to the court. The evidence against this woman is overwhelming. He declares, "Let her own confession be read into the record." He nods to you. This is the heart of the trial. You must now read aloud the confession you yourself recorded. The words that were extracted from Greta in the darkness of the interrogation chamber. Your voice feels like it belongs to someone else as you read her supposed account of flying on a goat, of kissing the devil's rump, of receiving a powder made from the bones of unbaptized infants. It is a lurid, grotesque fantasy, a script written by the Inquisitor and pulled from the pages of his dark books. As the court notary, you have the honor of reading a 20-page, single-spaced confession about flying goats and demonic banquets, all of which was admitted to by a woman who can't even remember her own name at this point. You feel like the official stenographer for a nightmare. When you have finished, Heinrich turns to the accused. "Greta," he says, his voice deceptively soft. "You have heard your own free and willing confession. Do you stand by it now? Before God in this court, a flicker of the woman she once was returns to Greta's eyes. She looks up, her gaze finding her husband in the crowd, his face a mask of helpless agony. "No," she whispers, her voice a dry crackle. "It is not true. I said it only because of the pain. He made me say it." Heinrich's face hardens. "Silence," he thunders. The court notes that the accused attempts to recant her confession. This is a common and well-documented trick of the devil, who now speaks through her tongue to obstruct this holy proceeding. Her denial only further proves the hold he has upon her soul. He leans forward. "Woman, if you persist in this lie, you will be returned to the questioner, so that he may help you find the truth again." Checkmate. Greta collapses, sobbing, and nods her head. "It is true," she whimpers. "All of it. It is true. The trial is a sham. It is a piece of theater designed to give the appearance of justice to a conclusion that was determined the moment the first accusation was made. There is no defense counsel. The hostile testimony of her neighbors is admitted as fact. Any attempt by the accused to speak for herself is condemned as the devil's trickery. Welcome to the witch trial, where the main evidence against you is the confession you signed after several hours of painful persuasion. It's a bold legal strategy that ensures the prosecution always wins. You sit there, your duty to record every word, but you find yourself performing a tiny, secret act of rebellion, where you record Greta's final, whispered agreement. You add a small note in the margin, a detail only you will understand. You write post-tormentum, after the torture. It is a small, insignificant mark, a grain of truth in a mountain of lies, but it is all you can do. You are a witness to the debate that will preoccupy future legal historians. Is this a legitimate legal process, or a judicial horror? You see the magistrate, Herr Schmidt, wringing his hands, his face slick with sweat. He is a man of the law, and he knows this is a perversion of everything he understands. But he is too terrified of Heinrich and the mob to object. And you see Heinrich, his face calm and righteous. He genuinely believes he is following the necessary procedures for a holy war. He is not a corrupt judge. He is something far more dangerous, a true believer. The trial of Greta lasts less than 2 hours. When her testimony is done, Heinrich turns to the other judges. The evidence is overwhelming. The confession is complete and has been affirmed before this court. There can be only one verdict. The magistrate and the counselors, their faces pale, murmur their agreement. The verdict is a foregone conclusion. You watch as Greta is led from the hall. A woman already dead. Her soul destroyed long before her body will be. You look down at the official record you have created. It is a work of perfect, legalistic clarity, and it is a document in which every single word is a lie. You know that the trial was never a search for the truth. It was a ritual to ratify a decision that had already been made. The only thing left now is the sentencing. The trials, once begun, proceed with the swift and terrifying efficiency of a contagion. Each of the accused women is brought forth, one by one, and subjected to the same inexorable process. Your meticulously recorded coerced confession is read aloud. The woman, broken and terrified, affirms it. Witnesses, emboldened by the atmosphere of certainty, come forward with new, fantastical stories of spectral torment and bewitched livestock. Each trial is a repetition of the last. A legal ritual designed not to discover truth, but to confirm a conclusion that has already been reached. After a week of these grim, theatrical performances, the time comes for the verdicts and the sentencing. It is to be a great public event, a demonstration of the town's victory over the forces of darkness. A wooden platform has been erected in the center of the market square, before the steps of the town hall. The entire town is assembled, their faces pale and upturned in the cold winter light. You stand on the platform, just behind the judge's table, your scrolls of sentences clutched in your numb hand. The accused women, 13 of them now, including old Elsa, are herded onto the platform. They are chained, their faces gaunt and smeared with the filth of the jail, their eyes holding a mixture of terror, despair, and a hollow emptiness. Inquisitor Heinrich rises to his feet. His voice, sharp and clear, cuts through the tense silence of the crowd. He delivers a triumphant and terrible sermon. He speaks of the great victory God has granted them, of the unmasking of Satan's conspiracy, of the purification of their community. The devil has walked among you in the guise of your neighbors, he proclaims, his arm sweeping out to indicate the shivering women. But the light of God's justice has revealed their true faces. They have been tried by the laws of God and man, and they have been found wanting. He then begins the pronouncements, moving down the line of the accused. He points a long, bony finger at the baker's wife. Margareta, wife of Heinrich the baker, this court finds you guilty of the crime of maleficium and of entering into a pact with the demon Satan. You are a heretic and a witch. A great roar of approval rises from the crowd. Heinrich turns to you. Clerk, he commands, read the sentence. This is your moment of ultimate horror. You must now be the voice of this terrible justice. You force yourself to unroll the first scroll, your hands shaking so badly the parchment rattles. You take a breath and read the formal, legalistic words, your own voice sounding foreign and monstrous in your ears. For these crimes against God in this community, you read, the condemned, Margareta, is hereby given over to the secular arm to be purified by fire. Her soul, through this penance of the flesh, may God have mercy upon it. All her property and assets are declared forfeit to the town council. You see a greedy, satisfied glint in the eyes of some of the counselors seated beside the magistrate. The crowd roars again, a sound of bloodlust and righteous fury. The scene repeats itself. Over and over, Heinrich declares the verdict, and you read the sentence one by one. The women are condemned. The old widow who sold herbs, the reeve's wife, who now weeps uncontrollably, the other women who were named, each one's fate sealed by a confession whispered under duress in a dark room. Finally, Heinrich stands before Greta, the once proud wife of the wealthy merchant. She stands with a kind of broken dignity, her head held high, her eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the jeering crowd. "Guilty," Heinrich declares. You unroll her sentence. As you read the terrible words, you see her husband in the crowd. His face a mask of silent, helpless agony. His grief drowned out by the cheering of his own neighbors, after all 13 women have been condemned. A fragile, exhausted quiet settles over the square. The town has had its scapegoats. Their fear has been given a name, and now a sentence. They believe, purged the evil from their midst. Later that day, as you sit alone in your empty office, there is a quiet knock on your door. It is the merchant, Greta's husband. His eyes are red-rimmed, his face a ruin. "You were there," he whispers. His voice choked. "You wrote the confession. You know it was a lie. You know she is innocent. You must tell the magistrate. You must tell them." You look at the broken man, and your own heart breaks. You want to tell him that you will, that you can stop this. But you know the terrible truth. The machinery, once set in motion, is unstoppable. The record has been sealed. You say, your voice hollow. The confessions have been accepted by the court. The inquisitor has all the proof the law requires. There is nothing I can do. There is nothing anyone can do. He stares at you for a long moment, a look of utter desolation on his face, then turns and stumbles away. A man returning to a house that will soon be empty, his fortune soon to be confiscated. You are left alone with the stack of neatly rolled scrolls on your desk. The death warrants, each one bearing your meticulous handwriting and the final. Authoritative seal of the court. You have performed your duty as a clerk with perfect, terrible accuracy. You have been the instrument of the law. You look out your window at the market square. The platform is empty now, but the town is not celebrating anymore. A new, uneasy silence has fallen. The people are beginning to realize the cost of their purification. They have purged the evil, but they have also condemned their own neighbors, their friends, their kin. You know that the great fire that will be built in the fields outside the town will not cleanse anything. It will only burn a hole in the heart of your community, a scar that will never heal. It will not be a symbol of God's justice, but a monument to your town's fear, and to the brutal, inexorable logic of the law you have been sworn to serve. The day of the executions dawns cold and gray. The sky, the color of lead. A heavy, wet snow begins to fall. Each flake a tiny white ash. A premature mourning for the fires to come. It is a day of grim and solemn duty. All work in the town has ceased. The entire populace is compelled to attend, to witness the final, terrible purification. The site is a fallow field just outside the town walls. 13 great wooden stakes have been driven into the frozen earth. Around the base of each one is a massive pile of dry kindling and straw, surrounded by a larger ring of green. Slow-burning wood, designed to create smoke as much as flame. You stand with the magistrate and the other town councilors on a small, raised platform, a position of honor that feels like a pillory. You are here as the official representative of the court. To witness that, the sentences you recorded are carried out. A slow, terrible procession comes from the town gate. The 13 condemned women, dressed now in simple, coarse white shifts, are led by the bailiff and his men. The women are not a defiant coven of witches. They are a miserable, shuffling line of broken human beings. Some weep openly, their cries thin and lost in the vast, cold air. Some chant prayers, their voices trembling. Others, like old Elsa and the merchant's wife, Greta, walk with a kind of numb, vacant dignity, their eyes fixed on nothing, their spirits already having departed their bodies. Father Dietrich walks beside them, holding a large crucifix high. He offers them a final chance at repentance, his voice filled with a desperate, almost frantic piety. He is trying to save their souls. Even as the town prepares to destroy their bodies, you watch as each woman is led to a stake. You see their hands tied behind them, their bodies bound to the rough wood. You see the executioner, a grim professional brought in from a larger town, move from one to the next. You notice him in a small, almost hidden gesture. Tie a small leather pouch around the neck of each woman. You learn later that these pouches contain a measure of gunpowder. It is considered a final. Terrible mercy. The heat of the fire will ignite the powder, and the resulting explosion. It is hoped will kill them more quickly than the flames themselves, when all are bound. Inquisitor Heinrich steps forward. He reads a final declaration, his voice clear and strong against the wind, condemning the witches and commending the town for its piety in rooting out this nest of heresy. Then he gives the signal. The executioners step forward with their torches. You force yourself to watch, for this is your duty. You must bear witness, but you do not watch the women. You watch the fire. You see the torches touch the straw. You see the first, small, hungry flames lick at the kindling. You hear the great, collective gasp of the crowd as the pyres ignite with a sudden, whooshing roar. A wall of heat washes over you, even from your distance. The sound is what you will remember most. The roar of the fire, the sickening crackle of the green wood. And then, a series of sharp, dull explosions as the gunpowder pouches do their merciful work. And above it all, for a few, terrible moments. The sound of human screams, which are quickly consumed by the greater roar of the flames. The sight is a vision of hell itself. 13 great pillars of fire and black, oily smoke rising into the gray winter sky. The smell is unimaginable. A foul, acrid stench of burning wood, burning straw, and something else. Something sweet and terrible that chokes your lungs and clings to the back of your throat. You see the faces of your neighbors in the crowd. Their initial, righteous fury is gone, replaced by a pale, sickened horror. Men turn their faces away. Women hide their eyes in their hands. Children begin to cry. The public lesson is a success. The terror is absolute. You stand your post. A silent, stone-faced statue, your clerk's mind recording every terrible detail. While your soul screams, the fires burn for a long time. When it is over, all that is left are 13 smoldering, blackened pyres, spitting the last of their embers into the falling snow. The crowd disperses in a grim, unnatural silence. No one speaks. There is nothing to say in the days that follow the executions. A new kind of quiet settles over your town. It is not the quiet of peace. It is the quiet of a house where a great and terrible crime has been committed. It is the quiet of shared, unspoken guilt. The smoke from the pyres lingers in the valley for days. A constant, foul reminder. People stay in their homes. They do not look each other in the eye when they pass in the street. The bonds of community, already strained, have been burned to ash. The town is not cleansed. It is broken. A week later, Inquisitor Heinrich, his holy work complete, packs his books, his instruments, and his legal forms. He collects his substantial fee from the town coffers, a fee supplemented by the confiscated properties of the condemned. He gets into his black carriage and rides away, on to the next town, the next conspiracy, the next fire. He leaves behind him a town in ruins. You are left with the records, the accusations, the confessions, the sentences, the death warrants. A complete and meticulous history of your town's descent into madness and murder. You take the scrolls, your hands feeling unclean as you touch them. You place them in a heavy iron box. You lock it, and you place the box in the deepest, darkest corner of the town archives. You bury the story, but you know it will not be forgotten. You look out your window at the silent, fearful town. You are the keeper of its great sin. The fire has gone out, but you know that the town is now and forever will be a place of cold ashes, haunted not by the spirits of witches, but by the ghosts of the innocent neighbors they so righteously and so brutally destroyed. The great fires in the field outside the town burned down to smoldering embers, and then to cold, wet ash. Inquisitor Heinrich. His holy work concluded, collects his fee and departs in his black carriage, leaving your town to the silence and the snow. He leaves behind not a cleansed and purified community, but a shattered and haunted one. The spring that follows is a bitter one. The snow melts to reveal a landscape of grief. 13 houses in the village now stand empty, their doors barred, their windows like vacant eyes. No one wants to live in them. They are monuments to the town's madness. The fields belonging to the condemned lie fallow, their families either dead or having fled in shame. The town, already struggling, is now economically crippled. A new, more insidious plague descends upon the village, the plague of memory and guilt. The bonds of community, which had been frayed by hunger and fear, are now irrevocably broken by betrayal. The people who testified against their neighbors, who cheered at the verdicts, now have to live with the silent, accusing ghosts of what they have done. The market square is no longer a place of commerce and gossip. It is a place of averted eyes and muttered half-greetings. The tavern is no longer a place of fellowship. It is a place where men drink in sullen silence, each man alone with his own share of the town's great sin. The priest, Father Dietrich, is a broken man. The fire that once burned in his sermons is gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted weariness. He had sought to fight the devil, but in doing so, he became the architect of his own flock's destruction. He soon requests a transfer from the bishop and is replaced by a younger, quieter priest who knows better than to speak of demons. Your life is now one of profound isolation. You are the keeper of the record, the only one who knows the full, terrible truth of how the fire started. You continue your duties as the town clerk, but your work is now mostly recording the sale of properties for a fraction of their worth and the departure of families who can no longer bear to live in a town of ashes. Historians in a distant future will debate the end of the great witch hunts. Did they end because of the dawn of a new age of reason, or did they simply burn themselves out, proving too socially and economically devastating for the communities that embraced them? You, living in the wreckage, know the answer. The hunt in your town did not end because people stopped believing in witches. It ended because there was almost no town left to save. The cure was infinitely more destructive than the perceived disease. You visit the execution field sometimes. In the quiet of the evening, there is no memorial. The stakes have been torn down, but the ground is scarred. 13 great black patches where the grass is slow to grow back. A permanent wound on the landscape. You stand there, and you feel the weight of the 13 souls. Not as witches, but as your neighbors. And you feel the weight of your own role. The man whose neat, careful hand wrote the words that condemned them. Years pass. You grow old in the quiet, sad town. New families move in. People who do not know the full story, who only know that this is a place with a dark, unspoken history. You remain the town clerk, a silent fixture, a man who holds the town's terrible secret locked away. One day, as an old man, your hands now spotted with age and trembling slightly, you unlock the heavy iron box in the archives. You unroll the old parchments one last time. The ink is faded. You read the testimony of Conrad, the bitter farmer. You read the coerced, fantastic confession of old Else. You read the names of the 13 women, and you read the sentences, written in your own youthful, perfect script. You have had a lifetime to reflect on the brutal history you witnessed, and you have come to a final, quiet understanding. The true horror of that winter was not a coven of witches. It was the terrible, perfect storm of a bad harvest, a genuine fear of God, and the small, petty, everyday sins of human hearts. Envy, greed, and spite. The witchcraft was not the cause of the town's misery. It was the language the town found to express a misery that was already there. The greatest brutality was not the fire of the execution, but the cold, clear, unshakable certainty in the eyes of the men who lit it. And so your story. The story of the clerk who chronicled a town's descent into madness comes to its end. You have been our witness, our guide through a time of terrible fear. You have shown us how easily the bonds of community can be broken, and how the machinery of law and faith can be turned into an instrument of horror. The world you knew, with its deep-seated fears and its brutal remedies, has faded into the past. The ashes of the pyres have long since been washed away by the rains of centuries. The names of the victims and their accusers are gone, forgotten by all except for the quiet, dusty records of history. Let the memory of that sad, broken town now recede. Let the echoes of the screams and the prayers fall silent. The fire has gone out. The fear has passed. All that is left is the deep and profound peace of a story that has been told and understood. The world is different now. The ghosts that haunt us have different names, Ina, but the lessons of that dark time remain. There is no danger here. There is only the quiet of your room, the safety of your own time. Let the peace of that knowledge settle over you, a gentle comfort in the darkness. It is time to let the past sleep, and for you to do the same.